Thanks for joining us. You're watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. The budget 2020 is upon us. We're going to see and hear what the budget is going to be revealed in just 2 or 3 weeks from now. And a lot of the conversation regarding this budget involves around wages, both on the wages received by the employees, as well as how much companies need to pay out for hiring employees. So those are the kind of things that are currently being debated, and therefore we got to look into another aspect of how this can be approached, including that of being a freelance worker and hiring freelance employees. And joining me in the studio is Tomas O'Farell. He is the co-founder of Workana, a platform that talks about or trying to match employers and employees who are in the freelance business. Tomas, again, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Let's understand a little bit better about your company before we deep dive into all the other issues. What does Workana do?
Workana is a freelancer marketplace. So what we do is we connect clients on one side with freelance talent on the other. We got started in Latin America 7 years ago, and things luckily went very well for us. We became regional leaders. And this past year, we've done our first international expansion. And that's why we're targeting Southeast Asia, with Malaysia being our headquarters for the region.
The thing about marketplace is that the idea has always been around for ages. The problem is always in the execution, particularly when we come to the topic of closing deals and ensuring that you have the workers' protections intact. A lot of platforms like Freelancers, for instance, have come under pressure because they were unable to give or accord that particular protection to the employees finding work. How would Workana ensure that that doesn't happen on your platform?
Correct. So one of the great things about a platform like Workana is that it adds a level of trust to all transactions. For example, one of the common pains for all freelancers is getting paid. There's all these stories about freelancers that have to wait months and months and months on clients that are either they're skimping on paying or they just don't pay out altogether. One of the things that we do is we give them an escrow protection, so they know that all the work that they do on the platform is 100% guaranteed. So they know that the money's there, and as soon as they finish the work, they'll be paid. So that's one of the good points.
The thing about marketplaces, again, because you're looking at demand and supply and you're sitting in the middle, you can actually look at the cost structure of the wages currently being paid. One can normally argue that because of the fact that you have visibility on this pricing range, you can actually dictate what makes sense for both the employers and the employees. Do you think that this is fair for you to be able to have this visibility and also perhaps even manipulate the pricing that the companies are charging the employers?
That's a good question. So one, we don't do this manipulation, even though we do have this visibility. We don't set the prices. We let the freelancers choose their own wage. What we do is we try to match the correct client with the correct freelancer for them at that time. So for example, one client may be coming to a platform looking for somebody to do the job really, really quickly because they're in a hurry, so they value speed. Another client may be looking for the best possible freelancer, the best quality and most experience, regardless of rate. So that we try to match them with a different set of freelancers. And another may be looking for price, so they may be willing to try somebody that is very junior or just starting out, and that's okay. So all those three clients, we should be able to match them with 3 different profiles of freelancers.
A risk for your business is on them connecting with each other outside your platform.
Yes.
Once the first deal is done. Is that something of a worry for you?
That's always there, and that there's always a chance for that to happen. One thing that we found, we started looking into it, and we saw that it wasn't really that big of a problem. Why? Because number one, once people, freelancer and client, go outside, they lose this escrow protection. But mainly on the freelancer side, everything that they do adds up to their public profile. So every job that they get this reputation and the star rating, and they keep improving on this. So once they have this public profile, a magic thing starts happening for the top ranked freelancers, which is clients start coming to them for hire. So that's when they can actually choose which client to work with, which client doesn't. So it doesn't really make sense for them to go on platform. Plus our fees starts dropping out as they go along, so at the end they're paying very little commission.
There's also this conversation of businesses on creating freelancers, and the conversation that I had on Freelancer before this, I think last year, was that they found out that there is a business on employees coming together and dishing out it's like an employment, I guess, agency.
Okay.
Where the employer looks at the profile. It seems like it's a person, a human being, but behind that, it's actually a company with, I don't know, 5, 10 freelancers working as one particular public profile. Is this a reality?
Yes, this is something that happens, and we very much like it when it happens. So one of the trends that could happen, the way it works, is that a freelancer starts on the platform, they start getting their first few jobs, start making experience, then they start choosing which clients to work, and at one point, once they are successful, they always reach this point where they have more clients and more work than they can actually do, because a day has only so many hours in it. So when that happens, a few of them actually turn around, they join with 4 or 5 friends, and they actually hire other people to join these small teams. And that way they can actually do more work. Particularly, they can also specialize in a particular skill. So one will do, okay, we'll do an app, a bigger type of app. I'll focus on the development side, and my friend will do the design, for example, the UX. So that sort of thing does happen, and it's very good when it does.
And of course, that would mean that they run a risk, or you run a risk of them making their own marketplace, and just moving
like a mini Workana within Workana. Yes, that could happen. But it's okay. One of the things that we try to do is to provide freelancers options to the best possible employment and the best possible type of jobs, regardless of where they are. That's one of the things that's very important for us. We try to put on a level field somebody that could be here in KL, for example, and a freelancer that could be in Ipoh or say Sabah.
Also, the problem with you being a marketplace, that you now have to source for companies that want to look for freelancers and at the same time looking for workers.
Yeah, the famous chicken and egg.
Yeah, I mean, so how do you manage these kind of dilemma?
What we focused on is, first, you need to be sure that you have the best talented freelancers on the platform. So that would be step one, making sure that you have an ample supply of freelancers that are very, very good and local freelancers. Once you have that, then the focus should be on generating more and more demand and going to the companies and getting them to start recruiting.
For marketplace platforms like yourself, that would be normally the better way of doing
Correct,
things.
because in the end, clients, even though you could design the platform to be very nice and very easy to use, etc., which we do, but in the end, clients come to us looking for the best freelance talent available. So once you have that, the client side comes off way easier.
Being a native Argentinian, you're literally half the world away.
Yes.
What makes Southeast Asia such an irresistible marketplace for you to go to? And why Malaysia, why KL?
Very good. So when we were looking for a market to expand, we really liked Southeast Asia, because in a sense we saw that it was similar to Latin America. So people say Southeast Asia, but in reality there's all these different countries that are vastly different among themselves. And we really like the long-term growth opportunities of the region. So we really liked. Once we focus on that, we started with the English-speaking part of Southeast Asia first. So for us would be Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. We could have chosen either of those for the base, but we chose Malaysia because we knew that most of our freelance talent would be coming from Malaysia. So we wanted to be very close to that. And also, I had a few friends that had lived in Malaysia, and they said, no, you should definitely go live in KL because Malaysians are very friendly, very open, the food is amazing, so you'll have the time of your life. And so far, I'd say they were right.
Cost structure is also very low compared to Singapore and Hong Kong.
That's also a very important thing, yes.
All right.
But then again, if we were looking for the cheapest place available, there's other options, say Vietnam or even Thailand or Indonesia are also cheaper. But then again, Malaysia has the perfect balance of not being maybe as expensive as the others, but for example, the English penetration and English language here is amazing. I was surprised by how well and widely English is spoken here. And the level of talent that freelancers have in Malaysia is also very, very good.
Okay, we'll talk more about the freelance talents right after this. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying on with us. You're watching Notepad. My guest today is Tomas O'Farell of Workana. We're talking about freelance business, but the focus right now, I want to trim down or zoom in, is on the freelancers themselves. Tomas, it takes a lot for somebody to be a freelancer, as opposed to being a full-time worker. And of course, the dream of many individuals around the world is to have a steady job, or at least to own a business and hire people in order for you to, supposedly build a stable business. But the world is moving very fast. We're talking about gig economy. We're talking about the e-commerce world or the digital age that we're living in. And sometimes, you know, people can have two jobs. They can have a steady job, you know, 8 hours a day and do freelancing on the side. Literally, that's exactly what it means by definition, right? But do you think that freelancing can be a full-time job? As in, you don't have a, you know, steady job, you don't have pensions or employee fund being you know, carved out of your salary. You do full-time freelancing. Is that a viable option for today's worker?
That's a good point. So since we've started here 7 years ago, we started getting more involved in the freelance market. We saw that there's this big trend that is just starting to happen right now, which is for the past, say, maybe 100 or 200 years, the world of work had been one way, where at first you went to work for an employer and you stay there your entire career. Then this idea of full-time employment at the same place changed, and people now move jobs around, but you're always working for somebody else. This model was very good because it gave you two things that are very valuable, which is security and provision, because you always know how much your paycheck was going to be, and you had this. One thing that is happening right now is that people are starting to value more their independence and their autonomy. So for example, they want to be able to choose which type of clients to work with, which sort of skills they want to specialize in, how many hours a week they want to work, if they want to work early in the mornings, if they want to work late at night, even which country they want to live in. So all this choice and flexibility, they start valuing those things more and more. And what we're seeing is that we're just in the beginning of this big shift in trend and preference, and how this all will evolve and impact the world of work still remains to be seen, but what we do know is that this is going to be huge, and that being a full-time freelancer, so to say, is and will be even more a viable option for many. For example, right now in the United States, this number is already at 50% of the working population is already freelance or about to reach 50%.
In the US?
In the US.
Okay.
Here in Malaysia, the numbers are a bit lower, but the trend is there and it's going there. It's now around 25-26%. So the trend is going there with people choose to be freelancers full-time, not because they cannot get a full-time job, but rather because they can, but they choose not to. Because one of the great things about
Sorry, but so that's the idea, right? That's the I guess the notion that people do freelance because they can't get real jobs. That's why they move to freelance. So it's out of necessity rather than out of preference. But you're saying that trend is moving.
That trend is moving, and you have people that could actually get a very good full-time job, but they choose not to, because once you become a freelancer, once you're successful and you have your online profile set up and you understand all the things that you have to do, which we'll get into a bit, to become a successful freelancer, you're able to manage two things. You're able to get the income level and the challenging career where you keep on learning and growing, but also you're able to get this flexibility. For example, you may be able to spend more time with your family, to set up your work schedule around family commitments. Or maybe at some point of your career, you want to work many, many hours a week, but at other points of your career, you want to scale down and dedicate some time for some religious pursuit, or to be closer with family, or to do some physical training for a sort. So as this preference change, the magic of being independent and sort of being in control of your own fate is that you can sort of do this.
But there's a trade-off, right? Because if you're hired as a full-time employee, no matter what you do, even if you half-ass your job, you're still going to get paid at the end of the month.
Correct. There's a trade-off, and there's pros and cons of doing it. One of the biggest trade-offs that you have is this insecurity. So your income fluctuates. You don't really know sometimes where your next paycheck is going to come from, and there's this uncertainty. One of the great things about Workana is that it solves much of those, because we put together all the different clients looking for freelance talent in the same place. So you don't have to go and sort of find clients in very different places. You can just go to one place and find all the clients that are looking for.
They're not restrictive, right? I mean, they can go to any other freelancing platform as well.
And we're okay with that, yeah.
And okay, so this is the idea where the person who wants to try out freelancing, he or she might be very intimidated to try it out because that whole, you know, they can't see 2 months, 1 month down the road, they just can't see it, right? And when they try it out and they get disappointed, and I'm sure the marketplace is extremely competitive, particularly when you're up against a certain number of people that can do the same job as you, and they have an added advantage. They've been around for quite a bit, they have a public profile, they have portfolios that they can be, you know, be proud of, and these kind of individuals very scared to try out because they don't have anything yet. They don't have badges of honor to showcase to the potential clients. How do they then enter this market when they know that the odds are stacked up against them?
That's a very good question. So how do you break through and how do you get started with it when, as you say, and that's true, getting started is hard. And it's similar to the world of full-time employment. I remember when I was first doing my first interviews, it was hard because I didn't really know what to do, what to say, how to work, what do I do. My skills were all zero because I didn't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
So but what you do have much more in full-time employment is you have a network of friends that have done it before. And they say, okay, you should do this in an interview, you should do that. There's all these people that help you, guide you in the way. So with freelancing, it's the same thing. It's hard to get started because there's all these uncertainties. Making your own name and getting those first few clients is always very hard. But maybe because this trend is newer, there's less people that help you and guide you around. So one of the things that we try to do very much is to help them what are the steps that they need to do to get started? So complete your profile, set up exactly what you need to do. This is sort of a proposal that you should do to the client. These are the sort of jobs that you should aim for. These are the jobs, not so much because the client is looking for somebody that has those 10, 15 years of experience. So focus on this. Don't get discouraged because in the beginning you could get discouraged. I remember that, again, going back to the first few full-time job interviews that I had, it was frustrating because you said, yeah, I think I did great. And then you never heard from them again. And said, what happened? Was it me? Am I ever going to get a job?
Yeah.
So it's those sort of insecurities are there, same for full-time as there are for freelancers. What we try to do, since we see what's going on and what happens in the platform, is try to guide them along the way and help them.
So you do provide some sort of coaching
a lot,
tutorial?
Many, because for example, since this is so new, there isn't really a lot of authority and people doing, so we provide a lot of content in sort of blog posts, videos, how-to guides, all these sort of things.
But sometimes it's not contextualized because different markets behave differently. Do you have that kind of market knowledge within the locality of the operations that you work
we've set up here, so we're based here and we're living here, so we're gaining that, this local experience, and everything that we do is customized for the local market.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the employers themselves and whether or not freelancing is a talent pool that they should think of moving forward. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying on with us. We're talking about the freelancing business, and as a business owner, you would realize that the biggest component of your cost has always been headcounts and the cost of employees. But the stability that you accord for having full-time employees in your organization allows you to plan your business model accordingly. So right now, does it come to a point where we have to realize that hiring freelancers would be even beneficial because you can bring your cost structure to a lower base? Here to discuss this is Tomas O'Farell, the co-founder of Workana. Thomas, what do you think of businesses thinking seriously about hiring freelancers? Do you think that there is a mixed pool of having full-time employees and some portion of freelancers, or maybe they can just shift all the way out and hire freelancers altogether?
That's a very good question, and we see that companies sort of fall into a range. So some companies are seeing this change in preference and this shift in behavior for people that say, I don't want to work full-time, I prefer to work on my own. And some companies choose to ignore it and say, okay, it'll go away and this is going to be small and I'll just keep on doing what I'm doing. But those companies are finding it harder and harder to recruit talent because most of the people that they were recruiting before are choosing to go on a separate path, and they're finding it very hard to scale. And then on the other side, you've got companies that go all the way and say, okay, I'll really embrace this trend and I'll be a part of it, and it'll help my company. It could be on the cost side, but that's not mainly the driver. The main driver for them is speed. So they're able to scale up and down their companies as they have. They're not restricting their labor pool, say, to KL or a particular neighborhood in KL, but rather they're opening it up to entire Malaysia. So they're looking for somebody that is very good at a particular scale, or they're looking for 20 people like that to hire. It could be hard to do, and those things take a long time. These hiring processes take very long. And by opening up your talent pool, they actually access talent that was sort of unheard of before, and they can move way, way quicker.
How do you enforce quality? Because if you have full-time employees, you can literally crack the whip and get the job done to your satisfactory levels. But freelancers, they might not have that kind of control, right?
Correct. You mean as a company, how do you ensure quality while working with freelancers, right? And one of the things, that's one of the things where Workana helps out, where before you hire somebody, you already know the skill profile of each particular freelancer, so you already know that this freelancer is very good at this particular thing that you're doing. And one of the things that happens is that when clients are happy with a freelancer, the way they've worked, they keep working with that same person over and over again. So that's one way of doing it.
I mean, procuring a freelancer is one thing. This is when the job is being currently carried out and they are not up to mark as per the requirements of the employers. How then would the recourse be, at least on your platform?
Oh, well, the way it happens is whenever that happens, say a client isn't happy or a freelancer isn't happy with a job spec, both things could happen. They usually come to us and they say, okay, this isn't working out, let's do it. In most cases, we do like a self-mediation type of thing where both parties agree and say, okay, you hired me this for 10,000, I'll do it for 5 because I only went halfway, and we'll part happily.
You mentioned about that, right? Mediation, the ability for you to come in and arbitrate between the parties. It sounds like there's a lot of footwork being done. Do you think that this is becoming more of a trouble for you as a mediator, or is there going to be a lot of automation that comes into place in trying to match workers and companies, trying to match arbitration, those kind of stuff? Is automation a big deal in Workana?
So it is quite a lot of work to do, but it's key to be able to get that right, because one of the things that key of all these platforms is trust. So when you hire somebody to do something, so you hire somebody to edit a video for you, you have to trust that the guy is actually good and the person will actually come through with it, which is similar to other platforms like, say, Grab. You don't think about it, but you're getting into a stranger's car. I mean, you're getting into a stranger's car sometimes at 1 a.m. in the morning. Or with Airbnb, where you go fly halfway around the world and you sleep in somebody's home. Right now, you don't trust, you don't question that a lot, and you're okay with it.
Now that you mention it, no, I don't. I mean, I see it as a car.
You get in, but say 20 years ago, if I told my mom, "Hey, mom, I'm going back home and I'm getting into some random people's car and go," they said, "Ah, don't do that, don't do that."
Yeah.
But those platforms were able to install this trust, so you don't think about it and you just do it. We do the same thing. So trust is very important, exactly for that sort of thing, But considering the volume of these things, your automation question comes in. It's impossible to do and look at every single thing by hand. So you have to do a lot of automation tools, and we do. So for example, with the matching thing that we were discussing earlier, how to make sure that we pair the correct client with the correct freelancer, there's a lot of machine learning and automation that happens behind the scenes.
And of course, you have to train the program over time to make sure that you get it right, and you have to continuously train it.
Correct, yes.
So do you consider Workana to be a technology company more than anything?
For sure, because the key of that is matching, making sure that you maintain this trust level, this quality level, and that you're able to match and pair correctly and very, very quickly. Because one of the great things about this platform is that clients can get started in 48 hours. Most of the projects that we have get started in 48 hours. So speed is of the essence, which for an SME, for example, it's one of the greatest advantages they have against a big company. Is they may not have the resources, they may not have the talent, but they can move very, very quickly. So the more that we can help them do that, the better we help them grow.
All right. That was my conversation with Tomas O'Farell of Workana. If you've missed this interview, just head on to AstroAwani.com. Look for Notepad over there. You can also watch these kind of interviews on your mobile devices. Just download the Astro AWANI app wherever you get the application. Thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.